Hello and welcome to Simple Index University Course 202, where we're talking about barcode configurations. In this course, we're going to look at how to set up jobs that use barcodes, and they can be used in a lot of different ways. You can use them as just separators between pages. You can use them to establish document categories when you're breaking up pages. You can use them to pull in index data, or you can reference other index data held in a database, for example. But before we jump into all that, let's take a look at barcodes and what are we talking about here. I'm sure everybody knows the barcode, of course. We've got the UPC that's on everything you buy anymore. But those aren't used in document management very often. You'll see more of these up here. Code 39, Code 128 are very popular in this area. And both those two and the EAN and then these two down here are what we call a 1D barcode, one-dimensional barcode. So the value can only be read left to right. There's no data encoded on the vertical axis of it. Whereas something like the PDF 417, the data matrix, or the QR code that we all know so well these days, those are 2D barcodes, and there's information both vertically and horizontally encoded in there. So you can put a lot more information inside that code than you could in just one of these. So if we wanted to do, for example, a code that had name, address, city, state, zip, right? That would be one very, very long code 39, unmanageably long. It would not work out well if we were trying to do that. Whereas with the QR code, it can be pretty much this size we're seeing right here on the screen. It can be a pretty small code and still have a lot of information embedded in it. So, having said all that, let's go look at how Simple Index uses them. So in this job, we have some manual indexing going on. So in terms of actually capturing the information here, we're going to be entering that. But let's look at what's going on here. We have some barcode pages here. Now these barcodes, you'll notice, are exactly the same. There's not a different value between them. So all these are doing is just identifying where a new document begins. So let's jump back in here and we'll run this job real quick. And you can see it's pulling in. And each time it's just seeing this number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. And that's just an indication that we're going to start a new document there. So you can see that let's go onto the grid view. You can see that what was at one point 26 pages is now just these 5 individual documents. And that the barcode sheets, we'll notice, are not here. So we've got an option to delete the barcode. That way they don't end up in your final document, but they still get to serve their purpose for dividing up these pages. Let's turn that grid back off here for just a moment and zoom out a little bit on this. So in the case of this job, if we were working a similar sort of process where you're just using them as dividers, let's say that you've got a back file of filing cabinets just full of documents and you just want to pull everything out of the file folders, lay them all in the scanner, as many as you can at once. Well, this would be how you could divide those out. Just put a generic separator that you keep right by the scanner. We recommend you do that on like a canary colored paper or a light blue colored paper, and that way you can go take them back out and find them very quickly and pull them back out, use them in your next stack. So if we were actually indexing this one, we'd go in and do our patient name here, Randy Romero, and her date of birth is 2/24/1969, and then we have the MRN, which is MR. And I'm just going to put some digits here until we get to blue and match our code. So we've got a template going on in this medical record number, and we'll look at that when we look at the job configuration, but it's only allowing, it's doing a pattern match. It's only allowing a certain length of characters, but that's not with the barcodes we talk about in the more basic how to set up jobs. But you can do that sort of thing with barcodes as well, and we'll look at it in just a moment. And so if we got any notes, we do that there. And we can save that index, and then we go to the next page, or the next file rather. You can see we're on page 1, and we have a new person here, Doug Mast. I'm not considering typing all these things. I think you get the idea. So let's move on to the next thing that it can do for us. We're just going to end out of this job, and we'll pull in another job here. So in this case, if we go look at the input folder for this job, which is going to be here, we can see it kind of similar. We have some barcodes, but they are a little different. You notice that they're different lengths here. You can probably see at the scale we're at right now, but if we zoom in, actually open one, you can see this actually has a document category on it. So this is patient demographic. And if we move through those, so there's one called medical _medication history. So these are separators that when they're read, all the pages that follow the separator are going to be categorized as that type of document. So when we put everything together at the end, we can have a folder, and then within that folder we could have each of these categories of documents and just go right to the document you're needing to get. Likewise, if we were doing PDFs on our output here, we could actually assign bookmarks to those categories, and then you have one PDF you open and just can refer to the bookmarks that will say things like we just saw as those document categories there. So let's run this one. And when these come into the system, they're going to look a little different than what we saw in the last one. So in this one, we're actually seeing those barcode pages marked for deletion, where in the last one, since we were just using them as document breaks, each time it read that same barcode, the barcode that was between all the different documents, it was implementing a counter. And so in those particular kind of jobs where we're just using a counter for document separation, there's a second step that actually takes place, and it just goes ahead and compiles the individual documents for us. In a situation like this, we're not compiling individual documents in the same way, so we're actually going to see all the pages, but we're still going to get the exact same kind of results at the end. So you can see right here that we've got cover sheets. Everything in red is a page marked for deletion, so that's where the barcodes are, and then the pages in between are the ones that are going to be assigned to that category. So medication history, citation, privacy practice, etc. So in this one, again, it's a manual index, but in this case, we're just looking at one patient's file, and we're just breaking it up by category. So I can just go over here. We'll save that index, as we don't want to toss that one out, and we'll label this one Shane Sanders, and we'll put that DOB that's down there, which is 1/12/1987. And you can see, again, I'm getting blue content, so I'm matching my pattern. And now on this one, when I save index, another thing the blue is telling us is that this is actually a field that's set to be forwarded. So when we type something into it and we go to the next page, we don't have to retype those things unless the information has changed. But in this situation, this is all the file for one patient, and we're just putting in the different categories of documents within it. So in this case, I can just send that right on down the line with Shane's information, or I can go over here and save all, and it'll pass everything to all the pages. Everything's been indexed. We want to release the batch, absolutely. And so now if we go look at the output folder here, we've got just a single folder called Shane Sanders. And then within that, we've got all those different document categories, and we've also put his date of birth on the page as well. So there's your dilation consent, exam, fundus, photos, etc. So again, folder level is the patient, documents inside are the various document categories. So let's go back up here, and I'm just going to clear out this output folder so we can look at the next job. And let's go and look at the configuration a little bit here before we move to that next one. So here, as I mentioned, when that blue text was showing up, that was the forward. And we talk about this in the basics of setting up a job, but if you haven't looked at that, let's talk about it just a little bit here in this barcode job. So all that means is we've got this option right here, forward, checked, and you can see it's checked for each of the 3 fields, and that just is telling this simple index that we're going to take, since it's not reading a value off the page for these particular things, it's not reading the patient's name and date of birth, it's just going to bring forward the last time it had a good input, so we can just keep bringing it down to each page. And so obviously that saves you from typing these things again each time. And then when you do get to a page that needs new context, new entries, you just type those in, and those will get forwarded onto the later pages for as long as you need. All right, let's move on to that other job. Move on to our third demo that we're going to look at here. So in here, we're going to actually use a barcode. Let's go look at our input like we've been doing. So this one, let's pop that open. As you can see, is a 20-page file, and there is a barcode at the top of each new patient's set of documents. So there's not a barcode on every page, but just each time we begin a new patient's file, there's a barcode up there, and it's their chart number. So we're going to read that, and then we're going to use that value to reference a database and bring in the other information that we're wanting to fill in. So let's get out of here. We'll go back in here and we'll load that one in. So that's our barcode and autofill. And let's run it. And you can see very quickly it's buzzing right through. It's catching all these chart numbers. Let's look at the grid again. Always useful for seeing what's going on here. So there's that first page in the Manny Romero file. We've captured her information off of it, but all we captured was the chart number out of the barcode, and then it went over to the database that's in the background here and pulled in her name and her date of birth to add to these records. And then again, we've got our forward set, so those values are going to get passed to the pages that don't actually have the barcode on them to do a lookup with, so they'll still end up in the same file when we're finished. So if I just were to, for example, save index here, you can see over here in our index fields, brought all that data forward. And these are grayed out because they are being brought in from a database. It's not something that we're inputting. So we can just move them along. And you'll notice that one is in blue because it is a forwarded field. And then these last two are just assigning the date. They're fixed fields that are just assigning the date that we're doing this process, and then also it's forcing the term medical record. So let's just save all, and we'll see that it passes along all the values to every page. So remember, we had a 20-page file when we started. We're going to release this batch. And then if we go look at the output on that again, right there, and you can see now we've made 5 folders, one for each patient. And then if we go into one of them, we're using the chart number, again the patient's name, and we're adding their date of birth, and that's becoming the name of the file. And then also that scan date is part of it too. So we have those 4 fields comprising the file name here. So in the case of this one, let's go back and look at the job configuration here, and we'll talk about what's kind of going on in this one. So with this one, as I mentioned, we are looking up some values. So that means we've set up a connection to a database. Databases are covered in a different video, so I won't go through all the steps of the connection, but we're just going to look at what's happening here. And you can see that we just gave it the data source. So we're connecting out to this one called Healthcare MDB, and our mode is inserting new records. And in this case, the mode's not such a big deal because we're actually just looking things up. But when you initially configure a database, you have to turn on a mode. And so we just go with the first one in the list, which is insert new records. And that's really all we need to do for this part of it, just making the connection. Then, in our indexing and file naming, well, we know that we're looking for the barcode. And we know based on that barcode, we're going to go ask the database for the name and the date of birth. And we do that in this autofill settings. Again, not going to walk through all the setup necessarily, but you can see it knows the data source because we established that earlier. And then it's looking in the table called patient info. And then we're going to do a key pair match here. So in the database, there's going to be a field called chart number, and we're going to match that to the field called chart number over here in our index job. So it'll read that barcode, go back to this field and find a match, and then it'll go across the row and pull in the patient name and the date of birth that correspond to that medical record number. So we'll cancel back out here. So that's how it works. And you can see that, like I mentioned before, we do have the scan date as a fixed field. It's just bringing in today's date, and then also the document type is just a fixed field. We're just forcing the term medical record onto all of these documents as we process them. Again, another thing we can do with our barcodes, and let's go on and see the next example. Cancel out of here. So in this one, we're using the barcodes to actually represent each of the pieces of patient data. So let's take a look at our input files for this one. And we're going to look at number 5 here. And this is a multi-page TIFF file. We'll pop it open. You can see it's 20 pages. But in this case, our cover sheet has 4 barcodes on it, each one representing a different index field. So we've got a chart number, a name, an age, and a gender. And if I click through, you'll see there's the pages that follow it. So again, we're just going to forward our values to apply to all these pages. We're going to delete that barcode cover sheet. And then we get to another one. Here's our second patient. So let's close that. We'll go load this job, which is our process patient records. And so when we do this one, just like we've seen before, it's just, in this case, we're reading 4 barcodes. Does it very quickly. Cover sheet's being deleted. We'll go to the grid, and you can see we've got cover sheets being deleted, each with these red lines, and then that first piece of data is there. And then if we do our save index, as we usually do, it just brings those values forward. So you can see these are all in blue. They're being moved forward, and then they also get added to the pages as I hit save index. So once again, I can just do a save all here. Yes, we will. And I'm not going to release that. I'm going to go in here and clear out my output folder once more. So let's get rid of all that stuff. All right, now we'll release the batch. And we'll jump back to the output folder. And you can see this time we've used that chart number at our folder level. And then within that, we have a TIFF file that's named by, again, the chart number, the person's name, the age, and the gender are all associated with the file name. So just remember, you can use those pieces that you're indexing to create this hierarchy within your storage. So whatever values you need to quickly access these documents in the future, that's what you set as your index fields, and then you combine them in whatever way is most useful for retrieving the documents at a later time. So that's the main ways we use barcodes. Let's talk about how we actually make sure we're getting the right barcode and the right piece of data out of it. So we're going to go to this last demo job that we're going to show. And go back here. So this last one is more of just a demonstration of reading a bunch of barcodes and how we can manipulate that data that it captures in each one. So let's go here and look at this barcode configuration example. And in the case of this one, there's just one document in here just to demonstrate what we're doing. So you can see, let me zoom this out just a touch. There are 9 barcodes on this page, and they're of different types. And when we talk about types, I showed that in the very first slide that we're talking about the different formats of the code 28, code 128, the code 39, that sort of thing. So in our job configuration, that is controlled in the barcode recognition area. So a couple things to go over here. First of all, we have 2 engines in any edition of Simple Index. So whether you're in standard, the OCR edition does have a barcode engine included, and the professional version. Those are going to include the ItaliSoft, which is a commercial engine, and then the DTK, which is an open source engine. Those are going to be there by default in any edition that you might purchase of Simple Index. Clear Image is a separate add-on because they do have a different licensing arrangement, and so you can add it to any of the editions of Simple Index, but it's something that you pay for separately. And Clear Image is really some excellent barcode. So if you're working in a scenario where the barcodes are just not of the greatest quality, the documents have been handled a lot, the original printing wasn't very good, the scanning might have been sloppy, whatever you have, Clear Image is really, really good at just working over and over that barcode until it finds just a little bit that it needs to actually get a good match and bring it back to you. But again, most of the time, most of us are working with good images, good originals. Hopefully we're scanning them ourselves and we don't have to rely on somebody else to do that outside of our business, so we kind of control that process. And so then even the royalty-free engine like DTK is a good choice most of the time, and then ItaliSoft is there kind of backing it up. And then we see that fourth category, which is voting. So whether you have just the 2 engines or if you have all 3, it's going to read the barcodes with each engine and multiple times, and then whichever, if it's getting 2 different numbers, 2 different results, whichever one of those has kind of the most results is the one it's going to go with and put in the barcode field for you. All right, so that's our engines. Enough of that. Down here we have the barcode types. That's what we were looking at on that first slide, all the different types. And you can see there's code 39 that we mentioned, code 128 that we were talking about. And then we also have those EANs that we looked at. And so if we scroll on down here, right now we'll see that this job is set to unknown or all, because we do have a mixed page here with a bunch of different barcode types. And a note about the unknown or all. That is going to be the default when you're first setting up a barcode field. That's what it's set to. If you know the barcode type, it's a good idea to always go in and choose the barcode type, because it's going to go a lot faster. When it has to look at each barcode and then compare it to each of the different types and see if it matches that, that's going to make your job take a lot longer. This one went pretty quickly because we did have good clear barcodes, but it can result in much longer processing times. And, well, if you don't know what kind of barcode has been used on your sheets, well, there's a test barcode option. So if I click this, it's just going to prompt me to load a page in. So let's just bring in the one we're using, and it's going to look at it for just a moment, and then it's going to come through and tell us, using the DTK engine, it found a code 128 barcode, and the value was ABC123. It's also giving coordinates here of where it is on the page, but not something that's particularly useful for what we're doing. Again, it was code 128. This time it was ABCDEF, and there's going to be several of those code 128s, and I'll just click on through. There's the one that was the text instead of ABC123. It was actually patient demographic, again a code 128. And then we have a code 39. And then we have the other types there, the PDF 417 and the data matrix. While we're here, let's look at a few other things that you can do in the barcode recognition area. You can tell what pages to process. And then choices there. Well, every page. That's what we've been doing in the job so far, all the jobs we've looked at. You can also look at the first page in the batch only. So if that's where the cover sheet's going to be that has all your barcodes, well, let's not spend time seeing if there's barcodes on those other pages. But that means you're just loading one job at a time. So if we're doing, again, our back file thing, we're just going to put one patient's file on there with that cover page on the top, not put a second page patient's file on there at the same time, because we aren't going to read that later cover sheet. We're just going to read the very first page. Then we have pages with greater than one barcode. So like the last demonstration job we were looking at where we had those 4 barcodes on there, that allows us to just read the pages where there's multiple barcodes. So if we had mixed in the ones from the third job that had the barcode up in the corner, if those were also in the same job, they wouldn't have been read because we were using pages with greater than one barcode. So again, that's a way that you can kind of make sure you're getting the right pages. And then odd pages and even pages, just like it sounds. Reading every other page, either 1, 3, 2, 4, that kind of thing. And then lastly, let's look at the advanced barcode settings here. So in this, we have the delete barcode page. We've seen that in action. Every time those were read, marked for deletion, so we can tell that we don't want the barcode page. We have require an exact match on the template. So if we're setting a template back here in our indexing and file naming, template right here, which we'll take a look at in just a moment, you can require an exact match on it, which means that if we're just setting a template that, say, looks for 4 digits, for example, and it finds a value that is, let's say it's really 6 digits, but what it's doing is it's like, well, there's at least 4 here, and it's the first one I've found, so I'm going to return that one. Whereas if we turn on the require exact match, it'll only return a value to that blank when the value is quite literally a 4-digit number, not a 3-digit number, not a 5-digit number, just a 4-digit number. We'll bring that back. We have some character replacement settings that are just built into SimpleIndex, and this is if you're having kind of messy barcodes that's having a little trouble reading them, you can have this go in and strip out any characters that it might accidentally think are part of the barcode, which includes basically all the punctuation marks. Usually your barcode is not going to have anything like that in it, so you can turn on that, and that strips that stuff out of there, and it gives us a better chance at getting the right value coming from that barcode. Over here in this column, require checksum and remove checksum character. So a checksum is just a extra character that's mathematically computed to kind of validate the barcode. So if in certain barcodes, if you want to check that, you can enable that feature. And then if you don't want that checksum to actually be part of the value that's returned to the index field, you can turn on remove checksum. And then finally, the last thing here is enhanced analysis, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to spin longer on each page and just move through these barcodes very, very carefully. Also do some image cleanup and try and optimize the barcodes as it's processing. And again, that's something you only need to turn on if you do your initial testing and you're finding that the barcodes are difficult for the system to read. And then down here we can establish a confidence. So we can say, basically right now it's saying, if you're not at least 25% confident that the value is correct, do something. And then we have this field to the left that's going to, are those somethings? So we can actually just use what it found anyway. We can leave the field blank. We can just do nothing about it at all. And we can also label it a couple of things. We can label it 0, we can label it bad read, or you can insert the text you prefer in that situation. All right, so remember what we're looking on back here. Let's cancel out for just a moment. So we've got a bunch of different ways that we can make sure we're getting the right barcode in the right fields. And this is useful if you have a situation like this where you have a bunch of different barcodes on the page and we just need to make sure we're getting, the ones, either we're trying to match the right barcode to the correct field over here on the right, or we're wanting to make sure we ignore all the other barcodes and just find the one we're looking for. So if you've got a shipping manifest, and so the shipper has their barcode for the tracking number, and there's a barcode on there that you want to use that is the actual product ID, and then there's another barcode on there that was a serial number for those products and that sort of thing. And so you want to make sure you get that one that's pertinent to your system. So there's a few ways you can do that. One of them, if we're looking at a situation like this, and you would be if it was like one where there's a tracking number on there, for example, we can tell it to ignore the other types. In other words, we're going to tell it to only look for one type of barcode. So let's go back into that job configuration. And remember, all of our first 5 or 6 there were in that code 128. So we're going to go down here to our barcode recognition. And we're going to come down here, and let's say in the case of this one, we want to get that PDF 417 that's down there. So I'm going to undo the unknown or all. I took the highlight away from it, and then I'm going to go in here and engage PDF 417. And if you want to do multiples of these, you can just click on the other ones too. So if there's 3 types that you need to be checking for, then you can enable just those types. And again, it's going to go faster rather than having to look at all the types. So let's save this out. Yes. And we will end the job and run it. So you can see we just got one result back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that is the value behind this PDF 417 here. Since we weren't looking for any other types of barcodes on the page, none of the other barcode fields got filled in. Incidentally, when it was doing that first pass where all of the fields were active, it reads them just like we do. So it read starts at the top left. So it read ABC 1, 2, 3, put that in the first blank. ABC, D, E, F, put that in the second blank, and so on down the line. So keep that in mind as you're working through the order that you're going to have things appearing in your index fields, if it's pertinent. So another way that we can make sure we're only getting the value that we want, we can set a zone, much like we do in OCR if you've looked at that video. So let's end the job here. And we're going to go back into our job options. And we're going to go down here to the barcode recognition, and we'll enable the code 128 here, and we can leave the PDF 417 on. It's not going to hurt anything. And we're going to go up to our indexing and file naming. We'll go again into field 1. We're going to do a little edit here, and if we click through to the third area, we've got a set zone, and there it brings in the page that's in the input folder. So let's say we want to get this one that is the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just anywhere in this area, I can just draw a box and save that box, and then finish out of my field edits here. Okay, save the job, and now let's run it here. And so in this case, we're forcing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to barcode field 1, because that's where we drew the zone for barcode field 1. So now it's put that value in the first field, and then it still goes back and does the left to right, top to bottom. So we can see ABC 1, 2, 3 goes in field 2 now, DEF in field 3, and so on down the line. So that's what happens when you draw the zone. The zones are specific to the individual field. They're not specific to the entire image, whereas when we did PDF 417, that's saying we only want to look for PDF 417 code. So if there had been 10 of them on here, we would have gotten 10 fields filled in. There's only one, so it went into the very first field. All right, what else can we do to make sure we're getting the right barcodes? Well, there's another thing. Like we saw with the database job, where we were going and looking up some values that corresponded to the number, we can also do list files. And the list can again be a table in a database, or it can be just a simple list, a literal text file that's just a list of entries. So let's take a look at that way of doing things. And we're going to go down to our index and file name. And we'll do this for barcode 2. So let's go in and edit that one. And we can move next. And we're going to tell it that we're going to use a dictionary on this one. Next. Here's where zones would be done, just like we saw before. And in this case, we want to browse for a file. And in the same location as our simple index job, we have the sample document types. So if I put that in there, and then I can load it into the job. So here we can see what's in that text file. It's just these different terms. So it's going to read the barcode, compare it to the 18 terms that are in here, and see if it finds a match to any one of those terms. And that's what it will return to our index field. Just a side note on these things, we talk about this in other jobs as well, but you can save the list in the actual simple index job configuration by checking this, which is handy if you're, say, let's working against a database and we just need to load in the initial values and we're not going to be connected to the database after that. So we can store the values within this SIC and not have to have a constant connection to the database. You can also limit it to just the values in the list. Not so much going to apply in our barcode job, but is when you turn that on, the users can't go in and edit that field. They can only, it can only pick something that's in the list, and if there's nothing in the list, it'll just be empty and they can't pick that. And then you also have the max errors here, which is allowing for a certain amount of characters to be wrong. Again, barcodes, we're not going to run into that. That's more of an OCR situation there. So let's save out of this. And yep. And now we'll run it this way. Okay, so you can remember Our zone is still drawn for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so that's going up there. And then in the second field, we're comparing everything to that list. And so the only match here of all these barcode values was the one that says patient demographic. So that goes into barcode field 2, and then we go back and read top to bottom, left to right. So ABC 1, 2, 3 goes into field 3, and so on down the line. So that's another way that we can ensure we're getting the exact value that we want. So there's a lot of ways to narrow it down. And again, this is only going to come up if you're running into multiple barcodes on your pages. Something we see more with shipping and those kinds of jobs where there's going to be a lot of hands touching that document as it moves through the workflow. And so each stop along the way might have their own barcode that they need to reference back. And by the time it gets to you, there's only one you want, and you need a way to narrow that down. And here are a few of those. One other nice thing that we can do with barcodes, I'm not going to look at the splitting things out anymore. We've pretty much covered that. But just so you're aware, one of the very, very nice things about barcodes is they tend to be very accurate. Basically, you're getting a good read or you're not getting a read at all. Having an incorrect read, very rare. So when you know that we're just going to read these barcodes and they're going to process, those are going to be the values that get assigned to my file, you can get yourself to a situation where you don't even need to have the user look at them. We don't have to do this verification that we've been seeing in each one where we're pulling up the grid and all that. And that's accomplished through the pre-index batch checkbox here. So if I turn that on and then run the job, it's going to go grab all the pages, read all the barcodes, and not stop at that point where it shows everything to us. Just go ahead and save them out, and you end up with your files, your documents now put together neatly in the output folder. So really, that's kind of it for barcodes. There's a lot there. We looked at 5 different sample jobs here to kind of explain it, but the key takeaway is that you can use them, to divide up a document, to assign categories to groups of documents, to load data in from a database just by reading that single barcode, and also actually having the barcode represent all of your index values and loaded directly in that way. Something I like to point out here, this is crucial. If you're thinking that, okay, I'm going to start scanning this back, I'm just going to scanning all this back file that I have, and I'm going to generate some barcodes and put them on top of each one of these. Well, that's fine, and there are reasons to do that when you've got a huge back file or what have you. But if it's just an ongoing scanning project, and you think, okay, I'm going to make a barcode, and then I'm going to take that over to the scanner, and I'm going to run it through, and it's going to read that barcode, and it's going to assign these indexes for me. That's fine, but in the time that you have generated that barcode sheet, printed it out, taken it to the scanner, you could have just created a simple index job that had your index fields and typed them right in there and not bother with the barcode, not use that extra piece of paper, what have you. And it's actually a little more efficient in reality. You just, instead of typing those things into your barcode cover sheet generator, you're typing them right into the index fields on simple index. So barcodes are great, but don't think that they're the be-all, end-all. Recognize that there are situations where if they don't already exist on your pages, you may not want to make them. You might want to just make those separators to break out the files, but in terms of actually assigning index data, you can type that one time in simple index and not type it one time and print it out and add it onto the stack in a separate program. So that's got it. I hope this has proved useful. If you have any questions, please visit the wiki, send us an email. We like to make automation work for everyone. That's kind of our mission in life here. And we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.